One last one for you, Dana. You're now officially promoting boxing shows. We have UFC lightweight champion ILIA Topuria saying he's going to knock out Terrence Crawford. Can we expect some crossover boxing matches like you did with Mayweather McGregor moving forward?
I certainly hope not.
No tengo ninguna opinión, que cuando se quiera medir, cuando quiera poner a prueba su técnica, sus habilidades, aquí estoy para demostrar, porque es que últimamente me molesta porque hay muchos boxeadores que salen y siempre se meten en nuestro juego y nos critican y siempre nos quieren por debajear, y la verdad es que hay muchos atletas que han intentado ir al boxeo y probar sus habilidades, pero no conozco a muchos de ellos que hablan tanto que hayan probado sus habilidades en MMA, pero de todas maneras, cualquiera que quiera, aquí estamos.
I'm not worried about it at all. To be honest, I never even seen this dude fight. I didn't even know who he was. When he seen me at the UFC, he came up and shook my hand saying, "What's up to me?" I didn't even know who he was. Then I see him online talking about he'd knock me out. And, well, if you wanted to fight me, you had the opportunity to tell me like, "Hey man, I want to fight you. What's up?" That's fake. I'm not gonna go hide behind, the keyboard and go, I knocked this dude out, this and that and this. I definitely think he's trying to clout chase. I think he'll definitely get in the ring with me for the right check. That's what we all do it for. But at the same time, what the fuck is that? I don't know what he thinking this way. I will. Ain't even nothing to talk about.
She just destroyed her own career with one Instagram story. And honestly, this breakdown is going to change how you see combat sports forever. We're talking about ILIA Topuria going absolutely nuclear on the boxing world, specifically calling out Terrence Crawford in a way that's got everyone asking one brutal question. Is this the beginning of the end for boxing's credibility? Because what just went down isn't just fighter trash talk. This is a cultural earthquake that's exposing the dirty secret the boxing world has been hiding for years.
He's not nowhere near on the level of Conor McGregor. Let's be real, stop it. Don't ever compare him to Conor. Conor was here, he's here. Like I said, I don't know this guy. I never seen this guy fight. And I watch a lot of MMA, you know what I mean? Maybe, I'm slipping. Maybe he's a good fighter, you know what I mean? I don't know, but I honestly never seen this guy fight, for sure. I've seen Conor McGregor fight a lot of times. It's night and day. You know it's night and day. Don't ever try to say they on this level. What we talking about? What we talking about? We not talking about that. Tell that guy to, keep up the good work in his career. I wish him the best.
I think UFC's better than boxing. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great.
The skill level is different.
All right, so hold on, let me ask you guys a question. You don't think like John Jones would dominate in boxing, honestly?
Hell no.
What?
Hell
okay, Ilia Topuria.
Tell him come fight me.
He's a crazy boxer, bro.
I don't care. Tell him come fight me.
Hold on a second. What about...
UFC is good for what they do, and we good for what we do.
That makes sense.
What I mean?
To be honest, love Justin Gagey. He's already spoken, ILIA Topuria, about his desire to want to go and compete in the boxing world.
If I prepare for 6 months, like only boxing, bro, put me whoever you want in front of me.
His hands are electric, and of course the power that he has is second to none, right? He's only a little guy, but my God, does he pack a punch, right?
Here's where everything gets absolutely wild. Floyd Mayweather made over $100 million fighting Conor McGregor, and everyone celebrated it as this massive boxing victory. But let me tell you what nobody wants to admit. That fight proved the exact opposite of what boxing fans think it did. McGregor, an MMA fighter with zero professional boxing experience, nearly knocked out one of the greatest defensive boxers in history. Think about that for a second. A guy who fights with his hands maybe 30% of the time almost finished a supposed boxing legend. And now Topuria is basically saying, hold my beer, and challenging Crawford to step into his world. The audacity is insane, but here's the kicker. He might actually have a point.
Hands for because he cruised to a victory in that fight. Now, in that fight, I don't know, maybe to add insult to injury, Terrence Crawford walked out to ILIA Topuria's walkout music. That annoyed the champ Topuria, right? And he had a little bee in his bonnet. But since then, he's been distracted. And when he comes back to the UFC, he's going to fight Justin Gagey. I think that's probably going to be the main event at the White House in June. But then, as I said, he has spoken many times about wanting to fight boxers. And now we have Shakur Stevenson, world
Now listen to this part because this is where Topuria absolutely loses his mind in the best way possible. When he talks about his 6-month boxing preparation, he's not just throwing out random numbers. This dude is literally mapping out how he'd dismantle Crawford's entire game plan. And you know what's terrifying? Topuria has been finishing elite UFC featherweights with his hands. We're talking about guys who train to defend against punches, kicks, elbows, knees, takedowns, and submissions. Crawford fights guys who only have to worry about 2 fists. Topuria is out here saying, "I'll beat you at your own game with one hand tied behind my back." And the scary part is, based on what we've seen, he might not be wrong. This isn't confidence anymore. This is a man who genuinely believes he's operating on a different level than these so-called boxing champions.
If he wants to step into the squared circle with me, bring it on. So, let's have a look at what he said. So first of all, this all happened on a stream of Aiden Ross. And Aiden Ross said that, UFC is so much better than boxing. And,
You guys with the UFC as a whole?
Yo, I saw you say that. You gotta take that back.
What?
You say that the UFC is better than boxing.
It's true, and you know it's true.
It's not true.
Come on,
It's not
even look.
and he said, you got to take that back because boxing is so much better. The UFC will never be better than boxing.
UFC would never be better than boxing.
at all. It ain't even
What?
close.
Ever.
And then Stevenson added,
The skill level is different.
and yes, the skill level.
But here's where it gets absolutely insane. And this is the part that's got the entire combat sports world buzzing. Crawford did this little walkout stunt at one of Topuria's fights, basically trying to get in his head and create some drama. What Crawford didn't realize is that he just poked a sleeping dragon. Topuria saw that as disrespect, and now he's channeling all that rage into what could be the most explosive call-out we've seen in years. But hold up, because there's something way more dangerous happening here. Topuria has to fight Justin Gaethje next, and Gaethje is literally engineered to destroy fighters who get distracted by outside noise. This dude has ended careers with his violence, and if Topuria is thinking about Crawford instead of focusing on Gaethje, we could be watching a champion lose his belt and his mind in the same night.
Man, they are a pain in the arse. It's hard to hit them, and it's easy to get hit. But you know what we'd do? We'd push them up against the fence, we'd throw a kick, we'd chop their legs down, and they wouldn't be dancing around anywhere. Or we'd shoot in a double leg takedown, put them on their arse, and just elbow the living death out of them, right? Or choke them out on.
And get this, the skill level argument that Crawford keeps pushing is absolutely falling apart under scrutiny. Crawford talks about boxing being the sweet science, all technical and refined. But Topuria is operating in a world where you have to master boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and about 50 other disciplines just to survive. You think Crawford's jab is technical? Try throwing that same jab while defending a takedown, checking a leg kick, and watching for an overhand right all at the same time. That's what Topuria does every single time he steps in that octagon. And here's what's really wild, Topuria has been finishing people with his hands in a sport where everyone knows the punches are coming. Crawford fights guys who literally only have to worry about punches. So when Topuria says Crawford couldn't handle the octagon, he's not just talking trash. He's stating a mathematical fact.
It takes effort. So that's the first thing I would say to Shakur Stevenson when he says that the skill level isn't the same. And he's right, in the boxing world, it isn't the same. So then Aiden Ross chimes in, he's like, hold on a minute, let me ask you a question.
All right, so hold on, let me ask you guys a question. You don't think like John Jones would dominate in boxing, honestly?
Hell no.
And I can answer that question. I don't need Crawford or Shakur Stevenson. He wouldn't. If he stepped over to the heavyweight division right now in the boxing world, John Jones would get beaten. Just like the majority of mixed martial artists would. Of course, we had Francis Ngannou.
Here's the brutal truth that's got boxing fans losing their minds right now. In the octagon, there is no running. There is no dancing around for 12 rounds. You try to backpedal and circle out and you're getting taken down. You try to tie up in the clinch and you're eating knees to the body. You try to lean on the ropes and there are no ropes, just a cage that traps you with a man who's trained to finish fights, not win rounds. Crawford's entire defensive system, all that shoulder rolling and footwork, becomes completely useless when Topuria can just grab him and slam him on his head. And that's not even considering the psychological warfare. Crawford has never felt the panic of someone trying to choke him unconscious. He's never had to defend his life while someone's trying to break his arm. That changes a man, and not everyone survives that mental shift.
Very, very distracted. He seemed overweight. He seemed a little bit sloppy, okay? And he paid the price. He almost got beaten by a mixed martial artist making his boxing debut. All right, so carry on here. So then Aiden Ross says, well, what about ILIA Topuria? And Shakur says, tell him to fight me.
Tell him to come fight me.
He's a crazy boxer, bro.
I don't care. Tell him to come fight me.
Right? Now, as I said at the beginning, this could be the next big crossover matchup. Now, granted, Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, that was lightning in a bottle. Floyd Mayweather, of course, he was 49-0 at the time. He was undefeated. He was Money Mayweather. He was the man. He was the face of boxing for that generation.
But wait, it gets worse for the boxing world. And this is the part that's really going to blow your mind. Remember when Logan Paul almost knocked out Floyd Mayweather? A YouTuber with 6 months of boxing training nearly ended the career of a supposed boxing legend. That wasn't a fluke. That was a preview of what happens when the carefully controlled world of professional boxing meets real athletic ability. Now imagine what someone like Jon Jones would do to any heavyweight boxer on the planet. Jones has been finishing elite athletes for over a decade, guys who are literally bred for violence. You think Anthony Joshua's jab is scary? Jones would take him down and submit him in under 2 minutes. That's not speculation. That's just physics and skill sets.
The biggest star that the sport of mixed martial arts has ever seen by a long country mile, okay? Simple as that. So them two going up against one another, they had the world tour that was very, very successful. Multiple cities all over the world, people losing their minds in London, in Toronto, in Dublin, and all kinds of shit, right? The promotion was on the next level.
Look, here's what everyone's missing about this whole situation, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say this changes everything. The numbers don't lie. UFC pay-per-views are consistently outselling boxing matches. The biggest combat sports moments of the last 5 years have all been MMA-related. Conor McGregor became a bigger star than any active boxer. Ronda Rousey was selling more pay-per-views than Floyd Mayweather. The culture has shifted, and boxing promoters are terrified. That's why Crawford is doing these little publicity stunts, trying to attach himself to real fighters like Topuria. Because deep down, he knows his sport is becoming irrelevant, and the only way to stay in the conversation is to borrow credibility from the UFC.
It resulted in over 4 million pay-per-view buys. It was the money fight, and both men made an absolute fortune. And now look at this. We've got ILIA Topuria that, regardless, and we're not talking about the tattoos or the manifestation.
Now here's where the business side gets absolutely fascinating, and this is something most fans don't understand. There are legitimate rumors that the UFC is considering adding boxing matches to their events, basically absorbing the entire sport. Dana White has the money, the platform, and the audience to make boxing just another division in the UFC. Imagine if they signed Crawford, put him on a UFC card, and then had him fight Topuria under boxing rules. The pay-per-view would break every record in combat sports history. But here's the thing, once Crawford is in that building, surrounded by real fighters, the illusion completely falls apart. The fans would see the difference immediately. They'd see a specialist trying to compete with complete fighters, and it wouldn't even be close.
He's got the profile. He's building and adding to that all the time. The man is one of the biggest stars in all of the organization, and he's not even competing right now because they've got an interim champion, right? But he's coming back, and if he beats Justin Gaethje, and that is a big if, and if he does want to go and box, well, guess what? Now the UFC also have Zuffa Boxing, right? So they have the perfect platform. They're putting on fights every week. They're slowly building in the boxing world, and from my understanding right now,
here's the most brutal part of this entire situation. Crawford has this perfect record, this carefully constructed legacy built on fighting hand-picked opponents in a controlled environment. Every fight is scheduled months in advance. Every opponent is studied and prepared for. Every variable is managed and controlled. But Topuria lives in a world where that perfect record means absolutely nothing. In the UFC, you fight whoever they put in front of you whenever they tell you to fight them. You don't get to pick and choose. You don't get to avoid dangerous matchups. You either adapt and overcome, or you get finished and go home. That's the difference between a real champion and a protected commodity.
with a TV deal in North America, right? So those guys know their boxing, okay? That's what he said. So they've got the platform. They don't need to go off and use other promoters. They do it themselves already. They've just got to sign Shakur Stevenson, and to be fair, he's not a Floyd Mayweather. When you look at the record, the man is 25-0, 11 knockouts, and when it comes to the championships, WBO featherweight champion at 126 pounds, mind you, WBC super featherweight champion at 130 pounds, and the WBC lightweight champion at 135 pounds, and the WBC junior welterweight champion at 100.
So here's what's really happening behind all the trash talk and social media drama. Topuria isn't just challenging Crawford to a fight. He's challenging the entire boxing establishment to prove they're still relevant in modern combat sports. He's saying your best guy can't even hang with our champions. And honestly, based on everything we've seen, he's probably right. The skills gap is massive. The mental toughness gap is even bigger. And the entertainment value isn't even comparable. Boxing had its time, but that time is over. MMA has evolved past the point where single-discipline fighters can compete. And Topuria is just the messenger delivering that uncomfortable truth.
Then maybe you can even give up a few pounds and both guys can step in a ring for Zuffa boxing, okay? Both guys can make an absolute goddamn fortune, and ILIA Topuria might just go out there and, unlike Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, might knock this guy out. Because I tell you what, I would never bet against ILIA Topuria in any kind of combat situation, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't watched too much of Shakur Stevenson. Can't lie. I don't have time to watch every single fight that happens on this planet, right? I watch a lot of UFC. I like a bit of Thai boxing. I like some kickboxing. I like all of combat sports. If it's on, I'll watch it. If I've got time, I'll tune in. If I'm not on the other side of the goddamn world, that is, or flying back from the other side of the goddamn world, right? I'll watch it if it's on and I'm sitting at home in front of a TV.
So there you have it. A UFC champion is calling out boxing's golden boy, and instead of accepting the challenge, Crawford is making excuses and hiding behind his perfect record. This isn't just about two fighters anymore. This is about which sport represents the future of combat athletics. And honestly, watching boxing fans try to defend their sport against legitimate criticism is getting painful. The writing is on the wall, and guys like Topuria are just reading it out loud. So here's my question for you, drop it in the comments. Do you think Crawford would last 5 minutes in the octagon with Topuria, or would this be the most one-sided beatdown in combat sports history? If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening in the fight game, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell because this war between boxing and MMA is just getting started. I'll see you in the next one. But hold on, because there's another layer to this story that's going to absolutely blow your mind, and it involves something most people don't know about Topuria's background. This dude didn't just wake up one day and decide to become a fighter. He's been studying the psychology of combat since he was a teenager, and what he's doing to Crawford right now is straight-up mental warfare at the highest level. Topuria understands that Crawford has built his entire identity around being untouchable, and now he's systematically dismantling that image with surgical precision. Every Instagram story, every interview, every call-out is designed to plant seeds of doubt in Crawford's mind. And here's the scary part, it's working. You want to know how I know it's working? Look at Crawford's responses. A confident champion doesn't need to justify why he won't fight someone from another sport. A secure fighter doesn't make excuses about rule sets and venues. Crawford is responding like someone who's genuinely rattled, and that tells you everything you need to know about the power dynamic here. Topuria has Crawford defending himself instead of attacking, and in the world of combat sports psychology, that means Crawford has already lost the mental battle. This is chess at the highest level, and Crawford is playing checkers. Now let me break down something that's going to change how you see this entire situation forever. The dirty secret that boxing promoters don't want you to know is that their biggest stars are protected assets, not real fighters. Crawford's team spends months negotiating contract clauses, weight stipulations, venue requirements, and referee selections before he even agrees to a fight. Meanwhile, Topuria gets a phone call that says, "You're fighting this killer in 3 months, good luck." And he says, "Bet, where do I sign?" That's the difference between a manufactured champion and a real warrior. One fights in a controlled environment with every advantage possible. The other steps into chaos and finds a way to win anyway. But here's where this gets absolutely insane, and I'm talking about something that could literally reshape the entire combat sports landscape. There are legitimate discussions happening behind closed doors about cross-promotional superfights that would make the McGregor-Mayweather payday look like pocket change. Imagine Topuria versus Crawford in a 2-fight series, 1 boxing match, 1 MMA fight. The first fight alone would generate more revenue than the last 5 boxing pay-per-views combined. But here's what boxing promoters are terrified of. They know Crawford would get embarrassed in the octagon, and that embarrassment would expose their entire sport as outdated entertainment for people who don't understand real fighting. And let's talk about something that's really going to mess with your head. The training footage that's been leaking from Topuria's camp shows him working with world-class boxing coaches, and these guys are saying he's picking up advanced techniques faster than fighters who have been boxing their entire lives. We're talking about a dude who's already elite at multiple martial arts, now adding championship-level boxing to his arsenal. Meanwhile, Crawford can't even throw a proper leg kick without falling over. The skill acquisition rate isn't even comparable, and that should terrify everyone in the boxing world who thinks their sport is more technical than MMA. Here's something that's going to blow your mind about the business side of this whole situation. The UFC's revenue model is designed around building stars who can carry multiple events throughout the year. Boxing's model is built around protecting stars so they can have one massive payday every 18 months. Topuria fights 3 times a year against killers and gets better every time. Crawford fights once every year and a half against carefully selected opponents who won't expose his weaknesses. Which model do you think produces better fighters? Which model do you think fans prefer? The numbers don't lie. UFC events consistently outperform boxing matches in viewership, engagement, and social media buzz. Now here's the part that's really going to cook your brain, and it involves something most people don't understand about modern combat sports. The new generation of MMA fighters are studying boxing footage from the 1940s through today, absorbing the best techniques from every era and adapting them for modern combat. They're not just learning boxing, they're evolving it, combining it with wrestling timing, kickboxing distance management, and submission grappling positioning. Crawford learned boxing in a vacuum, separate from every other martial art. Topuria learned boxing as one component of a complete fighting system. Guess which approach produces more dangerous strikers? But wait, there's something even crazier happening that most fans don't know about. Elite MMA fighters regularly spar with professional boxers during their training camps, and the results are not what boxing fans want to hear. These sessions aren't publicized because boxing promoters don't want their fighters getting embarrassed, but the stories that leak out are consistent. MMA fighters are competitive in pure boxing exchanges against specialists, while boxers get completely destroyed the moment any other element gets introduced. We're talking about UFC middleweights outboxing professional welterweight boxers in sparring sessions. That should be impossible according to boxing logic, but it keeps happening. And here's where the Crawford situation specifically gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. This dude has built his entire brand around being avoided by other boxers. But now, he's being called out by someone from a completely different sport who has zero fear of his reputation. Topuria doesn't care about Topuria's perfect record because he knows that record was built against one-dimensional fighters. Every person Topuria has beaten in the UFC would absolutely demolish Topuria's in a real fight, and everyone knows it. That's got to be eating at Crawford confidence, knowing that he's considered elite in a sport that real fighters view as just one basic component of actual fighting. Let me tell you about something that's going to completely change your perspective on this whole debate. The sparring footage that occasionally leaks from high-level MMA camps shows guys like Topuria working with Olympic-level boxers, and they're not just hanging with them. They're often getting the better of the exchanges. These are fighters who spend maybe 20% of their training time on pure boxing, and they're competitive with people who do nothing but box. Now flip that scenario to Topuria. Show me one video of a professional boxer successfully defending a takedown, escaping a submission, or checking a leg kick. It doesn't exist because the skill gap in that direction is absolutely massive. Here's something that's going to blow up the entire boxing versus MMA debate, and it involves science that most fans don't understand. Recent studies on reaction time and pattern recognition show that fighters who train in multiple disciplines develop faster neural pathways and better threat assessment than single-discipline athletes. Brain is literally wired to process more types of danger simultaneously, which makes his reactions in pure boxing scenarios actually faster and more precise than specialists. Crawford has trained his brain to recognize punching patterns, but Topuria has trained his brain to recognize every possible form of human violence. Which fighter do you think has better reflexes when the only threat is punches? Now here's where this gets really wild, and I'm talking about something that could fundamentally change how we think about combat sports rankings. There are legitimate discussions in the combat sports media about creating pound-for-pound lists that include both boxing and MMA, and the results would be devastating for boxing's credibility. Guys like Topuria, Volkanovski, and John Jones would dominate those lists because they've proven they can excel in complete combat scenarios. Crawford, Canelo, and other boxing champions would be ranked lower because their skills are limited to one narrow aspect of fighting. The boxing world is terrified of those comparisons becoming mainstream because they know their stars can't compete. But here's the most brutal part of this entire situation, and it's something that boxing fans really don't want to acknowledge. The entertainment value isn't even close anymore. Topuria's last fight generated more social media buzz than Crawford's last 3 fights combined. MMA highlights get millions of views on TikTok, while boxing clips struggle to break 100,000. The younger generation of combat sports fans sees boxing as slow, boring, and fake compared to the authentic violence of MMA. Crawford can have the most technical boxing match in history, and it still won't generate half the excitement of Topuria landing one clean knockout punch in the octagon. And let's talk about something that's really going to mess with boxing purists who think their sport is more skillful than MMA. The footwork, head movement, and distance management required to succeed in MMA is actually more complex than pure boxing because you have to account for multiple attack vectors simultaneously. Topuria has to maintain perfect boxing stance while being ready to sprawl against takedowns, check kicks, and defend submissions. Crawford just has to worry about 2 hands coming at him in predictable patterns. Which scenario requires more skill? Which fighter is operating at a higher level of complexity? The answer is obvious to anyone who understands both sports. Here's something that's going to absolutely cook your brain about the training methodology differences. Crawford spends his training camps preparing for opponents who can finish him in dozens of different ways: punches, kicks, takedowns, submissions, ground and pound, clinch work. Every day in the gym, he's solving life-or-death puzzles under extreme pressure. Crawford spends his camps preparing for one specific boxing style, with months to study tape and develop counters for predictable attack patterns. When these 2 different types of preparation meet in a chaotic environment, which fighter do you think adapts better? Which fighter thrives in uncertainty while the other crumbles? Now here's the part that's really going to blow your mind about what's happening behind the scenes in combat sports right now. Major television networks and streaming platforms are quietly shifting their budgets away from boxing and toward MMA because the audience engagement numbers aren't even comparable. Young demographics don't watch boxing anymore. They watch UFC highlights on social media and attend MMA events in person. Boxing is becoming a niche sport for older fans who grew up in a different era, while MMA is capturing every new combat sports fan who enters the market. Crawford can call out Topuria all he wants, but the cultural momentum has already shifted completely away from his sport.